Now, when we look into the development of political institution during the Sultanate period, we saw that Qazis were basically judge, but these people are not normal judge. These Qazis are well versed with the Islamic law, which is known as Sharia. So they follow those protocols as per those Sharias. So Qazi and ulemas had a great hand in the administration because Sultan is definitely he belongs to Islamic culture, Islam religion. So he will give importance to Qazi and ulemas only, and he will give preference to Sharia. So there were very few rulers like Alauddin Khalji, and these kind of ruler actually have their own decision making power, but most of the rulers we found like they are influenced with the qazis and ulemas for administrative decision making. And the main role of ruler has been seen as a collection and recording the land revenue. So this role was written in the Sharia. So as per that, the Sultan was working. So main purpose was to record and collect the land revenue from the entire region. Matlab in general, collection and recording the land revenue. That is the main role, main job of the ruler, and maintaining the law and order, of course. Now, when we look into some important designation in the political affairs during the time period of Delhi Sultanate, we see Muqaddam. Muqaddam is also known as the village headman. So Muqaddam is the designation of village headman. Patwari. Patwari is a very important designation because Patwari look after the land assessment. So the person who is going to keep a record over the land assessment and how much revenue is coming, how much it was assessed. So that person is Patwari, who is going to keep a record of the lands. There is a Munshif. Munshif is a kind of person who is doing justice at the village level. So Muqaddam, Patwari, Munshif, accountant were the chief village officers. They were the main designator who are going to look after the village level. When we look into the officers or important nobles of the king or of the ruler, those are Wazir and Bakshi. Now, who is Wazir and who is Bakshi? Wazir basically look into the revenue affairs. So Wazir is related to revenue and Bakshi is related to military. Now, it is very, very understood and very, very clear for any ruler what is requirement. For any ruler, what is the main requirement? Army and wealth. Without army and without wealth, the ruler cannot survive. So that is why these two rulers are very important. Wazir, revenue in charge, Bakshi, military in charge. And there was a chief Qazi. Chief Qazi means the main justice head, the main judge of the entire dynasty. Like in the case of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, we saw who was the Qazi of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, who was the Qazi of Delhi Sultan during the time period of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. It was Ibn Battuta. So he was a main judge. So what is the work of Chief Qazi? His work is to supervise and to look into the work of other officers, whether they are doing it in a correct way or not. That was the main role of Chief Qazi. Now, when we look into provincial government, this initially we have discussed about the village level, then we have discussed about the central level. Now we see what was there in the provincial government. Like we see center, then state, and then district in today's term. Just like that, when we have already looked into village level, we have already looked into center level. Now we will sort of look into the state level. So provincial government was the same as center. The designation were same, but it was just like that. The provinces are multiple. So in each province there will be individual designator for individual task or department. So head of the provincial government was known as Wali or Mufti. So they were known as the head of the provincial government. And sheikhs and parganas. Now, provincial center was further on divided into sheikhs, and sheikhs were further on divided into pargana. Pargana was further into divided into village. So provincial center were Wali or Muftis. Mufti was the head of provincial center. The head of sheikhs were the Shikdars. Pargana head was known as the Amil, and village head is Muqaddam. So this was the sequence. The group of village is known as the Pargana. So we can clearly identify from here the entire center, or we can say the empire or dynasty was divided into provinces, different provinces. The entire center or the entire dynasty got divided into different provinces. Provinces means group of villages. After that group of villages, it will be divided into different units like districts. So that is known as sheikh. So provinces as in state, then there will be a sheikh, different districts, and after districts, in district there will be a group of villages, small group of villages. Those will be known as pargana, and under pargana it will come village. So this was a sequence. This was the sequence of the political setup. Now we will look into the strategies of military control. There was conflict of power between Muslims and Hindus, definitely because these rulers, there were Rajput rulers also. Although now with the coming of these Muslim rulers, the power of Rajputs got completely declined, but there were still some regional kingdoms. So those were Hindu rulers. So there was always a conflict between Islamic rulers and Hindu rulers. And most of the Sultan faced the challenge of invasion of Mongols as well as from the northwest. This we already knew, that how they faced challenge from Timur, Mongols, and specifically northwestern frontier, where the Central Asia, the rulers from Central Asia are coming and attacking over Delhi. So that was a big threat for the Delhi Sultans. And every sultan was forced to keep a large army at the center. This was the reason, and this was the strategy. As we have seen in the case of Muhammad bin Tughlaq also, what happened? When he got shifted to Devagiri, again he has to shift to the Delhi. Why? Because there was a constant threat from the Mongols, and Mongols were continuously attacking over Delhi. So to protect his capital, again he has to shift there, and he has to set up his whole army over the Delhi. So Delhi has been seen as a center, and there always large number of army was required. So this was the main strategy of military control over the entire region. Now, how was the relationship amongst the ruler? There was a continuous battle, as we know, with Muslim rulers also and with Hindu ruler also. So when we talk about the Muslim rulers, even that the rulers, they were not having very friendly relationship with each other also. Although if they are Muslims also, there is always a relationship of suspicion. And if we will talk about Hindu rulers, what they used to do, if they used to attack over the Hindu areas, Hindu kingdom, they used to make those kingdoms purely Islamic in its nature. So that is what they were doing. As a foundation level, they were making it as a Islamic, on the basis of Islamic law, they are making it Islamic basically state, and then merging it with their own dynasty. There were continuous battles between Hindu and Muslim, and this is how the relationship amongst the rulers were. That was not very, very good or healthy, or we can say very, very settled. There was a continuous battle or warfare during the time period of Delhi Sultan. The court nobility and land control, which is one of the most essential part of the Delhi Sultans. The first point, first subtopic which we are going to cover here is about the court. Now, the court of Delhi Sultans were very splendid and ceremonial. It was a very lively kind of, the environment of court was always lively, and it was having all beautiful artifacts there, and everything which is expensive, which is very unique, antique, everything was present there. And if we will talk about people, regular visitors were there in the court. That was the speciality of the Sultanate courts. So those courts were beautified with number of things, and beautiful work was done by excellent artisans of the time. So that is why we are calling it as a splendid, because it was having various kind of objects and the kind of art which was presented by different artisans, whether we talk about literature. So everything was present there in the court, and ceremonial, because there was always kind of environment which is just like a festivities. Like it was always like a festival inside the court, because the environment was that kind of only. So that is why we are using the term ceremonial here. Now, during the 12th and 13th century around, the court boasted of many brave and noble warrior kings and foreign, as well as Indian writers, musicians. There were magicians, there were different artisans who were there in the court. And during the time, those people were just like a cherry on the cake. They actually increase the the level of the court, or we can say those people actually made the court as a beautiful place to live. So there are all small artisans who actually worked to make the court, the Sultanate court, as a beautiful and a lively place, as well as because the rulers were fond of so many luxury items. They were fond of art, they were fond of literature, they were fond of beautiful sculptures. So artisanal work was also there, architecture, they were fond of architecture also. So that is why when Sultan came across and beautiful any beautiful thing or things of interest, or wherever they conquest and they captured the land. So what they used to do, they used to take or brought those things into their court. This was the culture, this was the system of medieval time period, that whosoever the ruler is, whether they are attacking over any land, or they have gone through or passed through any area, whatever they found beautiful, interesting and resourceful, they used to keep bring it back with them to beautify their empire or dynasty. So that was one trait about the Delhi Sultans. And the court was there to specially maintain, to receive visitors and carry out day-to-day life, day-to-day business. So that was the main job in the court, or the purpose of the court. When we talk about the nobility, nobles, basically, nobles are one of the most important pillars in the administration during the time period of Delhi Sultans. And the Sultan with the help of nobles, they ruled for long period of time and efficiently also. And there were very impressive and powerful group of nobles who were very competitive. And we can see in the time of Iltutmish, we can see in the time of Razia Sultan, and Balban was among those 40 nobles only. So that kind of competitiveness was there among the nobles. They were very powerful. Some of them were very powerful, and they actually challenged the authority of the ruler. So nobles, although they were very competitive, they were very powerful. So in somehow we saw that they became threat to the ruler itself. So rulers sometimes have started getting threat from the noble side, from the nobility. And there were the designation, mostly nobles were Turkish and Afghanis, mostly. And those people got good designation, highest post designation in the empire. So like the head of the department of the entire kingdom and the provincial governors. So that sort of designation they got. Like we can see some example, Divane Ars. Divane Ars, the designation of the noble who heads the military department. Divane Wazirat, Wazirat Finance Department, the person who is the head of finance department. It's just like today we have different cabinet minister. So we can just correlate it with this time period of today's cabinet minister list. That military department head, finance department head, religious department head, royal correspondence and department. So there were different categories. These are some of the important one. And there was another group of nobles who held overall charge of the army, and they were known as Aras a Mamalik. So that is Aras a Mamalik. So these are different designation of the nobles during the time period of Delhi Sultans. Now let's look into the land control. When we talk about the land control during the time period of Delhi Sultans, there were reserved lands for the sultans. There were different categories and types of lands. One was there which was reserved for sultan, and the revenue which they get from those land were fixed, and those were kept for the personal expenses of sultan. There was another category which is the ikta, as we have done about the ikta system earlier also. So the ikta was a piece of land which nobles used to get in as a land grant. And what was the work of nobles? This is king. King has given ikta, a piece of land to nobles. Now, what nobles exactly have to do? They have to extract out of that land grant. They have to extract revenue, and they have to pay revenue to the king. And along with that, they will provide military services. So this was the main system of ikta. Now, nobles are getting this land grant. That doesn't mean that the entire revenue they are going to give to the king. What happens if suppose 70% revenue they are getting in a particular year? Out of that 70%, they used to give 50% to the, this is just an example. This is just an example. So 50% they are going to give it to the king, and 30% they will keep it for themselves. So this 30% they can spend on themselves also. They can invest it on the agriculture also. But most of the time nobles were very corrupt. What they used to do, they used to keep it with themselves only. So this was the ikta, another kind of land control which nobles were having. This specific that only sultan was having, and that was very limited. Ikta was at the maximum number. That was in the hand of nobles, and the head of those nobles who are holding control over those piece of land were known as iktadars. Now there is Diwan-e-Amir Kohi. That is a separate agriculture department which keep check on land revenue. That was the main purpose of Diwan-e-Amir Kohi, to keep check on land revenue, and they are part of They are part of agriculture department. So this was about the Diwan-e-Amir Kohi. Now next, when we look into the resources mobilization, now we will see the resources mobilization means the Sultan mainly collected different categories of taxes beside the certain others. So these are some broad categories of taxes which he used to collect. Let's look into the first example, Ushur. Ushur is a land tax. It's a land, these are land tax only, land tax, which was collected from Muslim peasants. So here they are collecting it from Muslim peasants. And it was 10%, 10% of produce. So 10% of produce, only Muslim peasants are paying this. And within this also there was a category. It was 10% of the produce on land which was watered by the natural resources. So that was 10%. And 5% on the land which was enjoyed man-made irrigation facilities. So these were two types, one 10% and another one was 5%. 5% from the irrigational land and 10% from the natural water land. Now next we look into the kharaj, another type of tax. Kharaj was a land tax again which was charged from non-Muslim. Now this is about non-Muslims. So it was charged up from the non-Muslims and it was ranged from most of the time 1/3 or 1/2. This is the percentage of charge which they used to extract from the non-Muslim community. Now when we talk about the jizya, jizya was a religious tax. This is very important, and in the previous session also I have explained the meaning of jizya, religious tax, which was imposed on non-Muslims. Now what is exactly jizya? Jizya is basically, because why we are calling it as a religious tax, this kind of this basically taxation system, the trend of jizya has been started from Central Asia. Why? Where? Because there in the medieval time period, all the Islamic people has conquered and occupied the area. So whosoever non-Muslim communities were living there, like Jews, if we talk about Central Asia, Jews, and there were Christians also. So they used to take charge, like taxes from them. Why they used to take taxes from them? Because they claim that this is our land. This is the land of Muslim community. And if you people are living here, we are actually protecting you. We are giving you land here to live. So within the Muslim community, we are giving you space. We are protecting you also. So that is why, for that reason, you have to pay the taxes. So because these people came from Central Asia only, so they bring this kind of concept here also, and they introduced jizya tax, which was the religious tax imposed on non-Muslim community. That the main items of expenditure were expenses on army. There were salaries of civil servants, civil officers, and of course the personal expenditure of Sultan. This was the main resources or expenditure of the resource in the empire or the dynasty. And beside these land taxes, there were other kind of taxes also, which was charged, like the purchase on horse, the trading tax. Those were separate. These are only land tax. These are agricultural tax, which was the main important and main source of the revenue. But there were other taxes also, like trading tax and purchase of horse. There was a tax on that also.